What's good, guys? So in this video, we are gonna try to tackle a more complex project, okay? And we're gonna be talking about an area of business projects called project management, okay? And this is a very, very hot niche. It's a very profitable niche because this is an area that's interested by businesses, okay? This is not so much a consumer thing, although consumers can still use it. Apps in this area, mostly the people that would be interested in this area are obviously businesses. Because what do businesses have? They have projects. Consumers, not so much. And so there's a lot of apps out there. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. There are lots of different suites. There's lots of different apps. There's also lots of different methodologies of doing it. And one of the kind of the more popular ways of doing it is called a Kanban template or a Kanban board. And in order to kind of show you how that works, one of kind of the most known tools that illustrates how this works is called TRELLO. Perhaps some of you have heard about this tool. This is a fairly popular tool. For those of you who haven't heard about this tool, I will show you exactly how it works. And so here I am logged into Trello.com. And this is what I'm seeing right now. I have a free account, and the free account is going to be more than enough for what we're going to be talking about and doing in this video. And so I have various templates here. So I can pick a template here, and it's going to go out and create it for me. So here's a template that I chose, and it has these boards here, right? It has these columns here. And so if I want to use this template, I need to click on this option here, create a board from template. And once I do it, I can just call it James template, okay? I'm gonna hit create. All right, so it went ahead and created this template for me. And the way it works here is that we have various columns here, and these are essentially statuses, okay? And the statuses and the number of columns and the name of the column is gonna be fixed per a specific board. So you can have multiple boards, but in each specific board, you might have different tasks. And the tasks, they could, go up in value. And the tasks, they can change, right? They're dynamic. Maybe, one day you have 20 tasks. And perhaps the next day you have, 2 tasks, right? They change. But what doesn't change are the columns, right? So in this specific board, I have these various columns. Now, I can change them here, but they're going to change for all the tasks. And that is why, a good practice is to kind of create many boards or as many boards as you need with different statuses and different columns to represent, exactly what you're working with to kind of match your requirements, so to speak. Now, this here is a template, right? So it has backlog, design, to do, doing, code review, testing, and done. And this is kind of one way of doing it. And you kind of have to think about what is comfortable for you or not. I actually use a similar strategy when I'm doing videos, right? So I might have an idea. I may have recorded. I may have edited. I may have, maybe a voiceover, different statuses. And then, the last status could be uploaded and make a thumbnail and then publish, right? These are various statuses. So just to kind of give you an idea, this is not going to be a Trello tutorial. But if you want to build this kind of tool, you guys got to understand everything there is about Trello, right? You got to understand why people use it. You got to understand the value it provides, right? We're talking about from a business perspective, right? Business is the key. I've done a lot of tutorials, a lot of videos on how to do it in Bubble or how to do it in Appgyver. And so, if you guys are looking for something technical, go back and look some of my videos. But right here, I want to focus on business. And so you can kind of change these things here. You can do, anything that you want. But really the key here is that when you're creating a task, so let's say I can create a task, James task 1, right? Now it has a card. When, I'm done with this backlog, this is kind of an ideas here, right? This is the initial stage. And I decide, all right, I want to work on this task. I drag and drop it here. Okay, now it's in the design. It's still not done. But the fact that I dragged it from backlog to design means that I'm going to be working on it, right? Because these ideas, I can have 1,000 tasks here, and maybe only certain ones, maybe only 20 or maybe only 30 of these are going to be dragged to the right. And then once I'm done with design, I can drag it here. I can drag it here. And so that's really how Trello works in a nutshell. I don't want to go too much into it because it's going to take an entire video. But, you guys can sign up for your free account. It has a generous free plan. And you can kind of play around with it. And there's a lot of advanced functionality. I can click on this. I can add, members to this card. I can add labels, checklists. So they have a lot of features, right? But this is kind of how it works in a nutshell. And a lot of people realize that this way of doing it is very, very effective, right? Because it has this psychological benefit when you're kind of dragging things. Okay, you have like a million things in your backlog, and you're like, okay, this is very overwhelming for me, right? It's too much work, lots of things happening. So the fact that you're dragging things, and I'm gonna drag this last one, it's kind of nice, right? Actually, this is probably a it's an image kind of thing. You probably don't need to drag this one. That's kind of how they design it. So that's one option. So it's a nice system for doing things, right? It's not the only way for doing project management and statuses and all that. I actually do it in a spreadsheet myself personally with kind of similar methods. I found the spreadsheet works a little bit easier for me, but a lot of people use Trello, use similar apps that have this kind of format. And so in today's video, we are going to be talking about how you can go out and build such an app in any of your no-code tools, whichever no-code tool that you like. I'm going to show you how you can go out and architect and design this kind of app, and what exactly do you need to do in order to have a successful kind of Trello clone, if you will. So if you go back to our drawing tools, right, this is kind of the template that we're following. And let's talk about the business purpose, right? The business purpose is to create a Trello clone or a Kanban board, or in kind of layman's terms, it's really to create a tool that helps people manage their projects. As simple as that, right? It needs to be simple. So I'm going to go make this red so you guys see it. Actually, no, that's still blue. This is red. And help people, businesses manage projects. That's it, right? Very simple. We don't want to go too crazy, right? I'm going to make it smaller. Just a little bit smaller so it's nicely formatted. And that is it. Maybe you guys can think of a better business purpose. Maybe this one suits you perfectly. It doesn't really matter. Well, it does matter. It matters a lot because the business purpose kind of sets the tone and kind of the goalposts for everything that follows. But if you can think of a good one that's good enough, that's fine. You don't need to have like a perfect business purpose. So this is kind of what I thought, what I came up with. Now let's talk about the views. Okay, this is very important, guys. And one thing you have to understand is that there's a lot of like really cool design that's happening here. So take a look at this one. If I drag it, right, this is obviously JavaScript. You can do it with JavaScript. You can do it with jQuery. You can do it using different tools. But guys, you got to understand the following. In your first version of your MVP, your initial version, you're not going to be doing this drag and drops, right? This is not necessary. It's nice. But if you don't have this drag and drop, you can still build a great Trello clone. It's not a requirement. The requirement is the flow. The requirement is the mentality, the mindset. That's the requirement, to kind of copy the way they're doing it. That's kind of, that's a requirement, right? But, having this drag and drop functionality is not a requirement. So the first thing you guys got to do is you got to go to this tool and you got to think about how you can do this drag and drop functionality without doing drag and dropping. And one of the ways that you can do it is that you can have a card, or you can have a table with different columns and different rows, but instead of drag and dropping it, you can have a button. One button could be here, right? So for instance, you can have a button, so something like this. Let me show you. So I have a shape here. Let's have something like this. All right. And you have your thing here, and then you have, maybe different cards. You have, let's say, 3 rows, right? 3 rows. Because a lot of people, one of the biggest mistakes they make is they look at this and they're like, well, I don't know how to do drag and drop in Bubble, or I don't know how to do drag and drop in Appgyver. And then they abandon the project. That's not how you do it. You gotta substitute that advanced functionality like drag and dropping with something else. So for instance, you can have, you can have your 3 columns here, let's say, instead of like whatever 5 or 6 columns that I have here. Well, yeah, like what is that? Like 7 columns I have here. And then you can have these buttons here, right? So like move to the right, move to the left. Obviously, you're not going to have a button. If it's the leftmost column, you're not going to have a button on the left. But I'm just kind of telling you. And then you're going to have these buttons. And the button could have an arrow, right? So something like this. Let me show you. It can have an arrow, right? So the left button can have kind of this angle bracket, to, the left-hand angle bracket. And kind of the less than sign, and this could be a greater than sign, something like this, or whatever you guys pick, or it could be an image button. You can keep it simple, right? Just super simple. So for starters, you can have a button that has something like this, super easy to do in any of the no-code tools. So that's the first thing, right? Even before we look at this diagram, even before we do anything, we need to take this advanced functionality and we need to transform it into ways that we can build right now. Because a lot of people get hung up on, some of the drag and dropping and this advanced functionality without, thinking how they can, substitute this advanced functionality for something simple, which is going to be a lot better because you can get your product out the door, right? You can finish it without, letting it just sit there because you don't know how to do drag and dropping or some of the other, flashy functionality. All right, so let's talk about the views, right? What are our views, right? Let's go back here. Let's take this, let's copy it. What is the main view? The main view is the dashboard. We gotta have a dashboard, right? A dashboard, and essentially a dashboard is essentially a list of statuses, a list of tasks, excuse me, with different statuses. That's it. Let's copy and paste that. What is our other view? Another view is to enter your task. Another view that you can have is to edit your task, right? Which is kind of similar. Edit your task. So you can say add task, and then you can say edit task. All right? And that's enough, right? That's enough because we're focusing on the customer. We're not so much focusing on the admin, right? So somebody that owns this app, obviously they're going to have some, advanced functionality for them that regular users do not have access to. But we're not going to focus on that right now. We're focusing on the customer, right? Even if you do not build a dashboard for the admin, it's fine because you can always go into the database. You can edit the fields manually. You can go into Bubble's database. You can, go to Appgyver's data source, and you can edit all of that manually. So it's not a requirement. That's kind of what you need, right? Because if you go back here, I can click on this, and then, I'm creating a card, right? So let's say new task 2, I can add a card, and then if I click on it, I have another screen and I have another view where I can edit it. Now it has a lot of functionality, labels, checklists, dates, all of that is extra. All of that is extra. The key is to add them to a specific column, okay? And then to drag them from one hand to another, from the left hand side to the right hand side. Another thing we need to do is we need to create a list. So they're calling it lists. I'm calling it columns. You can call it whatever you want. So you can have, new status. So it could be reviewed, reviewed or something like this. So let's do reviewed. All right, added list. Now I can also drag it here because I'm testing it. I review it. Oh, there's a code review. Okay, so kind of along the same line. So they have it there. If they didn't have it, this is where I would put it. I would review it, then test it, or maybe test it, then review the test, etc., etc. So another thing we need to do is we need to add columns. Okay, super important. Unless you're just going to give them a bunch of templates and that's all they're going to be working with. So we're going to say add column. I'm calling it columns. You can call it lists. You can call it a list of tasks. You can call it a task list. I think a task list is kind of cool. Task list, not a task, but a task list. That's kind of cool. So when you're building these apps, you kind of have to come up with your own terminology. Very, very important. Okay, because they're calling it lists. They're calling it, I think they're calling it a card, right? A card is like a task. Okay, so you can call it a card, you can call it whatever you want. So for instance, in this example, we're calling them tasks and a task list, which is the column. So there's that. You can delete a task list. You can click here and you can archive this list. So that's another one. Maybe in the beginning, you don't really need to worry about it, right? Because, you know, they're doing it, right? And, you know, they can just not use that column, right? We just want the super minimal viable product. Let's talk about the models. Models, in our models here, we have a collection of entities, essentially. That is what a model is. So if I copy this, all right, we put it in here. What is our main entity? And that is a task, okay? Another entity that's super important is a task list or a list, depending on how you call it. So I'm just gonna call it like this. And those are our main kind of models. You know, we're also gonna have users, which are customers. So I'm just gonna say customers or customer. I always do it in singular because you can understand that when you have many of it, it becomes plural. So we have task list, customer. You can have admins, all of that later on. Actually, I'm just gonna call it users. User here, because with Bubble and other no-code apps, they already have this user in there, especially Bubble, so you can just stick with that. And so what do we have? A user has many task lists. A task list has only one user, right? These are unique. These here are unique. They do not belong to anybody else. They only belong to me. So this becomes a user has many task lists. A task list has many tasks, but a task only has one task list. So you guys got to understand your relationships, right? When we are talking about one-to-many, that means that one side has many, but the other side, the many side, is unique, right? So all of this is unique. Like if, for instance, if we're talking about labels, or not even labels. Yeah, like these labels, these are going to be many-to-many because they're not unique. They're going to be the same in every task, in every task list. You know, they're going to be the same across the board. They're not unique to me. But this thing is unique to me because, you know, I don't want anybody else to see it. It's private, right? So when it's private, it becomes a one-to-many. If it's not private, it becomes a many-to-many. That's the way you want to think about it. And so a user has one-to-many task list. A task list has one-to-many users. I really hope that's clear. Maybe if we do the other way around, let's say we put user here and a task on the bottom. So now it kind of makes sense, right? User one-to-many to the next one. Task list one-to-many to the one that follows it, right? So we have user, task list, task. And that's it, right? All of these are one-to-many. Okay, user has many task list has many tasks. But a task can only belong to one task list, and a task list can only belong to one user. Very important to understand. You have to understand this right away, like right as you are designing this app. And that's kind of what we have right now. Now, of course, there's lots of other things. If you click on a card, you're gonna see you know, labels, which is gonna be many-to-many. I think that's about it. Power-ups, which is gonna be many-to-many, because these are not private to me. They're available to everybody, so this automatically becomes many-to-many. We have automation that's going to be many-to-many, right? Different buttons or whatever, power-ups, right? I can click on it. There's only all of these are many-to-many, right? It kind of makes sense. Power-ups is going to be another entity, right? So for instance, if I copy this, put it in here, and I say power-up, whatever. This is going to be many-to-many because this is not private to anybody. It's public. You know, my task might have, you know, 20 power-ups. Your task might have 20 power-ups, and they could be the same as mine or different. Doesn't matter. They're not private. So this automatically becomes many-to-many. So that's kind of what we have right now, guys. Okay, we have dashboard, add task, edit task, add task list, and, you know, we can have edit task list as well. Okay, it's the same thing. And you know, if you want to go a little bit beyond, you can do a delete task, right? That could be part of edit. So you don't need another view. That could be just logic. Or, you know, you can have, you know, yeah, I mean, you don't really need another view, right? For deleting, right? You're not getting any input. It's just an action. And so now for the logic, let's copy this. What is the main logic? To move the task from one task list to another. Move task. Okay? What's another logic? Edit task or add task. Okay, I'm gonna save space. I'm just gonna say edit, add, edit, delete. Okay? There we go. Just to save some space over there. And, you know, in Bubble, this is very, very easy to do. In Appgyver, this is all trivial to do. You guys can check out my other videos in order to better understand it. But, you know, if you are not sure how to do it in Bubble, let me know in the comments below. But I believe everybody knows by now if you've been watching my videos, my other videos so far. I just want to give you kind of an overall structure. I think this is a lot more useful than to actually show you how to do it in Bubble, because that's been done so many times before, not only by me, but by others as well. So moving task. When you move a task, what do? You change its task list. Change task list. So we have a list of task lists, right? This thing here. We have an array of them that are assigned to a specific user, which is that one-to-many relationship. And a task knows where, you know, in which task list it is. And a task list knows where in the board it is. So it could be on the left-hand side, it could be on the right-hand side. It needs to know, because I cannot drag this thing that way, right? I cannot drag it that way. I cannot do that. It's not going to work. Another thing we need to do is we need to have boards. Okay, so let's create another one. And a lot of times, right, I didn't realize this before, like when I was doing this, but, you know, it comes up. When you're talking about it, when you're designing, you can do boards. And what is boards? Well, boards is probably, you know, it's probably one of the most important ones, right? Because a user has boards, a board has a task list has the task, and then we have the power-ups, which is, you know, many to many, right? So if I drag and drop this right here, and I drag, just kind of create a space, this is going to have one-to-many. Task list one-to-many. Task is, you know, one-to-many. So a user can have, you know, one or many boards. A board can have one or many task lists. And a task list can have one or many tasks. So it's all one-to-many, right? But things like power-ups, labels, etc., becomes many-to-many, because any user can use it. They're available. They're public. There's nothing private about it. All right, so we have move task, we have add, edit, delete task. We can also have the same thing for, we can have move column, right? Because we can move these columns here, right? I can move it here. So in that case, we also need move column, task list, move task list. And then you can have something like this. Add, edit, delete task list. All right? And now we're kind of working with them. You can also create a board, delete a board. You're not gonna be moving a board, but you can have something like, you know, add, edit. So in the beginning, you probably just want one board, right? This is fine for creating it, but we don't really need much logic for boards, because you can just automatically create a new board, and that's it. You can't, you know, you don't need to let the user to change or delete the board or things like that, just to keep it super simple. So actually, let's move it here. Let's move it here. Let's move it here. All right, so that is kind of what we have. We have user boards, task list, task. These are the main ones, task list, task. The boards, we can just have it one, right? User can have one board initially, because that's like a luxury feature to have multiple boards. Right now, you know, when you're coming in, you need to handle a project. You need to do something with the project. Typically, you know, one board is enough. Like I had multiple boards for multiple projects, and that's fine. But, you know, when you're coming in, I think you guys should just build it with one board initially. So that is kind of what we have with models. With logic, that is kind of what we have. We have move task. You can also have rename board, you know, if you guys want, which is rename board. So they can at least customize it. So we have rename board. And actually, what I want to do is I want to drag it right here. Drag it here, drag that there, Actually, yeah, let's put it on the bottom. I wanted to put it up on top, but you guys get the picture. So we want to move tasks. You know, this is a task, right? We want to move it to the second board, right? These are not to the second board. We want to move this task to the other column, right? So we want to move it, change the task list that it belongs to. Remember, this one-to-many relationship here. We want to add, edit, delete a task, which is very, very easy and trivial to do with Bubble or any of the no-code apps. We want to move a task list, right? So we have this, we want to move it there. Rearrange the kind of the design there. We want to add, edit, delete a task list, right? So I can go in here and I can delete this thing. I can archive it, okay? So same thing, except it doesn't permanently delete it. It's still there. I can resurrect it, so to speak. I can unarchive it if I wanted to. And that's kind of what we have, right? And then you can rename the board. We're going to have one board to kind of to start with. And then later on, you know, you guys can add multiple boards. And once you have these relationships set up, then it's very, very easy to go from one board system to multiple boards. Super easy. And that's kind of what we have. Very simple. The most important thing is to not worry about this JavaScript, to not worry about that too much, and kind of translate it into ways that you can do right now with Bubble. All right, so that is what we have today. We were talking about building a Trello app, and this is how you go out and build it. And hopefully with your knowledge of Bubble or Appgyver or any of the other tools, you will be able to go out and build it. Now, if you do not know how to do it using a specific tool, go back and watch my other videos. I have lots and lots of videos on Bubble, on Appgyver, on many other tools that kind of break it down from a technical side. Here, we're doing architecture and we're doing design, and hopefully you found this useful. If you did, give this video a fat like, leave a comment below to show your support, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already, and I will talk to you guys real soon.